Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ. Hey there, welcome to the Memo Pod. It is great to have you aboard. Glad that all of you are joining us, whether you are a free subscriber here for the first half or you are a full-time paid subscriber. I know several of you taking advantage of that, and I'm thrilled. I'm glad that you're joining the May drive for membership. We've got this election coming up, and I put that video out to you this week saying, look, we know what's going to happen. We know that we're going to be pulled in different directions and we're going to be tempted to turn against our enemy, and so we have to do our best as Christians to keep our eyes focused on Jesus, and certainly we want to do that. So those of you who are making the leap and taking the 30% off for the annual subscription or the 20% off for the monthly subscription and joining our community, it's great to have you with us, and you'll get the second half of the Memo Pod, on which you remember that Malaysian Airlines, it was 370 Malaysian Airlines flight. It's been 10 years ago, or close. It's been 10 or 9, like a decade ago. Okay, we'll just round it off, say around a decade ago. I should have this. Yeah, it was 2014. It was 2014, so it's been a decade. And nobody knows what happened to that plane. And there's all of these different theories. In the second half of the Memo Pod today, I think this may be the stupidest theory that's out there, and yet they claim that there is visual evidence for this theory. I snorted when I read this and I saw this because these people are serious. They're serious and they believe that they have visual evidence for it. So that comes up in the second half today. I also, not just that, I also want to play for you some audio, if you're watching, some video of one of President Trump's, former President Trump's, what I believe will be his short list for vice president. Starting the process now of looking at those. Last week we talked about Kristen and how largely she's taken herself out of contention. I have no knowledge of the Trump campaign. I don't have any inside information on this, but the things that I'm reading from those who do say that President Trump, for whatever you may think of him, he was appalled when he heard about Kristi Noem shooting her dog. And the defenses that she's attempted to make they really haven't gone anywhere, and it's not getting any better for her. So you take her off the list, and you've got a relative short list. Two of them we'll talk about on the program today. A couple others that I think are out there that deserve mention that we won't talk about today. One of them isn't a Republican. One of them goes by the name of Tulsi Gabbard. And I know that people think that's a long shot and it wouldn't happen. I guess there's a part of me that thinks that she's the front runner. I really do, because it would be an unconventional pick. It would be something that would potentially be an olive branch to women. It would be an olive branch to disgruntled Democrats by having someone like Tulsi Gabbard on the ticket. I could see it coming. And frankly, at this point, I would say that if I was a betting man, I'd put some money on that, because it will be a long shot, and yet it's a long shot that I don't think is that long of a shot. So Tulsi Gabbard is one that's out there. And of course, there's others, but two of them that I want to get to on the program today. I'm going to start with one right now, And that was the guy that I had initially hoped would be the presidential nominee. And that's Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina. Tim Scott has been doing a lot of things recently. He's been going to various rallies. He's been appearing at places where President Trump is. Very early on, after he dropped out, you could see that he immediately, he goes and he endorses President Trump right away, which surprised me. It disappointed me, but it also surprised me because of Tim Scott's convictions. But it was clear that Tim Scott believed at that point in time, and his campaign apparatus obviously believed, that it was a fait accompli, that Donald Trump was going to be the nominee, that there was no way around that. And so Tim Scott wanted to be on the winning team. Now, you can criticize that strategy if you want, but it may end up landing Tim Scott the vice presidential nomination. And Donald Trump is not young. Donald Trump, there's no guarantee that if he's elected, he would make it through a full term. And Tim Scott may be finding the back door into the presidency. So if that's what you're going for, then maybe that's the way to go. I guess it disappointed me because I thought his convictions were such that they would prevent him at least from involving himself in the primary. But he did what he did. So Tim Scott, which I believe checks a lot of boxes for Donald Trump, just like Mike Pence checked boxes. He was kind of the polar opposite of Donald Trump. Donald Trump, this brash, largely inappropriate kind of guy, and you team him up with somebody who's got experience, executive experience, and he is as straight-laced as they come. He is as conservative in his demeanor and his attitude and everything as they come. And Tim Scott, I think, has a little bit more, not a lot, but he's got a little bit more charisma, if you want to use that word. But also being a black man from the South, that's going to be very helpful for Donald Trump for his ticket. He's along the East Coast. I think that there's a lot of boxes that he would check for political purposes for Donald Trump. So I think that Tim Scott is definitely a front runner for the VP nomination. So he goes on NBC News's Meet the Press, goes on with Kristen Welker. And Kristen Welker, of course, what the Democrats are going to want to do is to make this election. Isn't it funny? I say what the Democrats are going to want to do, and I'm just assuming that we all know that Kristen Welker is a Democrat and she's on the left and she wants to defeat Donald Trump. I mean, she's the host of Meet the Press, which is supposed to be an objective news program, but we all know it. We all know what side she's on, and so it just comes out. We know what the Democrats want, and Kristen Welker's one of them. They're going to try to make this election not about Joe Biden. Now, I don't know that they're going to be successful. It's going to be very difficult, and President Biden isn't helping himself in the interviews, and not that anybody should expect him to, but he just got torched. What was this? Just a couple days ago in an interview, and where they're just laying out the numbers for him. And this is a sympathetic media source, as most of them are. And Biden just said, well, those numbers aren't right. Of course they're right. Of course, the numbers that they're talking about of real income and inflation and all of those things, those are actual numbers. Well, that's not right. So they're going to do their best to make this election not about Joe Biden. And they believe, whether they're right or wrong, that the issue of abortion is the way to go. And this always cracks me up because I have heard for years that Republicans love to raise money and get elected by throwing social issues and moral issues in front of everybody. That they won't talk about the economy and they won't talk about the stuff that matters to Americans. I remember when I did a radio program right before me for a short period of time. They got in trouble with the Secret Service, and that's a whole nother story. They really did. But it was a show that was sponsored by the local labor unions. And so they were very pro-Democrat, and they would come on the radio, and they would constantly talk about me and how I was going to get on there and talk about the social issues and what they referred to as the kitchen table issues. That's stuff that you deal with your own family, and that's stuff that's personal, and that's stuff that's matters of faith, and that's what that is. But the political stuff is this stuff over here. So that's what I've gotten used to. It's what I've heard for years. It's what I've always come to believe, that that's the way it works, that Republicans talk about the social issues and they try to do that to get elected, and the Democrats want to steer clear of those. Well, who's talking about them now? Who's trying to turn the entire presidential election into a referendum on abortion? Because they see that as a winning issue for them. And Donald Trump, of course, has waffled on abortion, and he's lost some support from pro-life Americans. But that's going to be the strategy. And so Tim Scott goes on there, and Welker starts up all of this stuff about abortion, saying, well, what do you think about Donald Trump saying leave it up to the states? Best way to liken this, you've got a little crack in a piece of stone, let's say, or concrete, okay? And that concrete or that stone is the Republican Party electorate. And so Democrat media sources are sitting there, and Democratic operatives, and they're in cahoots together. They see a fissure, they see a crack in the Republican Party. And that is actual pro-life Americans who have supported the Republican Party because it's the best vehicle by which they can advance their values and their ideas and their preferences. So you got actual pro-life Americans. I'm thinking of people like the Live Action folks and Lila Rose and those folks who truly do believe that what's conceived in the womb is a human being. And a human being deserves protection. So you got that group of people there. And then you've got the MAGA movement, which may have some of those true pro-life Americans, but if they've been paying attention, they've seen that for Donald Trump, he's not really committed to the cause. He will be committed if it helps him get votes. And so that's why he's backed off all these, oh, that's extreme over there. And we want to allow certain kids to be killed, up till 15 weeks. That seems fair. That seems right. We can kill a kid up until 15 weeks. But after that, we shouldn't do that. Okay, to an actual pro-life American, that's appalling to hear that. So what the Democrats are going to do, and what Kristen Welker is going to do, they're going to see that slight crack, and they're going to try to take a chisel and a hammer and just drive that wedge wide open. That's what these questions are all about. So here's Tim Scott, a pro-life American, who's been very strong on the issue of abortion. And they throw this question at him and say, Welker throws the question at him, well, what do you think about Donald Trump saying that this is a state's issue? Do you think that this is a state's issue? Okay, the way Tim Scott responds to this, I think, is very appropriate. He says, well, there's no doubt the Dobbs decision sent it back to the states. So right now, that's where it is. The Supreme Court has ruled, and you have the leading Republican candidate, the guy who's going to get the nomination, Donald Trump, and he's been clear that his position is it's a state's issue. And we're going to see how the states handle it, Scott says. But there's no question that President Trump has been very clear that he wants the issue left to the states with 3 exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Okay, so that's his answer. He's not going to throw Donald Trump under the bus. He's going to say, I stand by my view, there should be a 15-week ban on abortions across the board, and that my position hasn't changed. That's what Tim Scott says. And then he goes further. I want you to take a listen to this, because this is textbook how the right needs to handle these questions. I don't think Trump has the discipline. I don't think he has the intellect. I don't think he has the patience. Okay? But this right here is a masterclass into how to handle this issue with the hostile left-wing media. Take a look at what Scott said.
Well, there's no doubt that the Dobbs decision sent it back to the states. So the Supreme Court has ruled. The leading candidate, our Republican nominee, has made it very clear that this is a state's issue. That is the decision that will be made, and we will see how the states handle it, but there's no question that President Trump has been very clear that he wants the issue left to the states with 3 exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother.
You have been very clear, though, as well as a candidate, and your message is the exact opposite. You said back in August, quote, we must have a president of the United States who will advocate and fight for, at the minimum, a 15-week limit. Do you stand by that, or have you now changed your view?
I have certainly not changed my position whatsoever. Here's what I'm telling you. The fact of the matter is that every single Democrat in the Senate and in the House have voted for abortion up until the day of birth. The former governor of Virginia has said he was a pediatrician, even infanticide. So stopping late-term abortions is something that 90% of Americans actually believe.
That's false, Senator. Democrats don't support infanticide.
Kristen, they've already voted.
Senator,
don't you love that? Again, don't you love how the media member is playing the role of the Democrat? Because she is, and so she's going to jump in there. Well, that's not right. That's not true. Democrats don't support. That's false, Senator. That's not true. Democrats don't support infanticide. Okay? Here's what I love. Even though it is aggravating beyond words that a supposed objective member of the media is clearly subjective and not objective about this issue, she has her positions, she knows what she thinks, and that's what she's going to advance. So she's getting defensive about her own beliefs. That's really annoying, okay? I'll give you that. But knowing that's what's going to happen, watch how Scott handles this.
No, Senator, but as you know, late-term abortions are exceedingly rare. As you know, they are exceedingly rare and almost always in the state of a medical health crisis.
Kristen, you cannot deny the fact that the Democrats have voted, not talked about, but voted for abortions until the day of birth. That is a fact. You can look that up in the records of Congress. So I'm not talking about hypotheticals. You continue to bring me hypotheticals. The truth is, and I got to say, this is kind of interesting. The truth is simple. The Democrats are radical. 90% of Americans don't agree with them.
Bingo. That's exactly right. Kristen, you can't deny the fact that Democrats have taken these votes. Those votes are a matter of public record. You can get mad about it and you can say all that, but the reality is, and this is the point that the right has to drive home, the left is not in the center of where America is on this issue. If you want to say that America is not yet ready to ban abortions at the federal level, I would agree with you in the sense that when I say they're not ready, there would be a great deal of pushback, and there isn't widespread support for a policy like that. Now, again, widespread support doesn't determine the morality or the rightness or the righteousness of a particular piece of legislation. In fact, in our godforsaken culture today, the less popular something is, probably the better it would be for society. But in this case, it's important to realize that leftist positions on abortion, when truly understood, abortion up until the moment of birth, which is what the Democrats have voted on, that position is so much further out of the mainstream than anything that the Republicans have pushed. And the Republican office holders, nominees, people who are hopefuls, people who are spokesmen, they better equip themselves just like Tim Scott did. Make sure you are ready to give that honest, straightforward, and true answer. When it comes to extremism, there's nobody that rivals the Democrat Party on the issue of abortion. And yes, that includes votes to permit infanticide. Your thoughts welcome. peterhegg.com. That's peterhegg.com, or you can comment below right here in the comment section. Would love to have those of you who are free subscribers go ahead and take advantage. It's a special right now, so jump on it. You can get the whole year through the election for just $70, and you're part of it. Or you can take the 20% off and sign up for a monthly subscription at just $8 a month. That's not much. That's about what Starbucks costs you a day if you get a drink there. Yeah. So we're not busting your bank. And I think that you would find it to be valuable. But if not, again, it's no skin off our nose. You are a steward of your resources. You do what you will. But we would love to have you. All right? So that's Tim Scott. I got another one coming up in the second half of the program that I do believe should be mentioned. I don't think he's a front runner, but should be mentioned as, well, in my estimation, would be a strong vice presidential pick by Donald Trump. And in the second half, the dumbest theory I've heard yet on the Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 disappearance, and yet they claim they have video evidence that they're right. I'll tell you all about it, those of you who are paid subscribers, right after this.
The Memo with Peter Heck.
Please patronize and thank all the sponsors of the Heck podcast, including McGonigal's Buick GMC, Terrell's Auto Service, Norris Insurance, Stevens Machine, Creative Financial Center, Indiana Right to Life, Tri-Green Tractor, the Indiana Family Institute, Hartman Family Farms, Liberty Financial Group, the Wyman Group, and J. Watson Creations.